Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the invite to come and talk to you about our work at the Department of Interior. For those of you that are not terribly familiar with Department of Interior and why we might be particularly concerned with scientific integrity in the issues that we deal with at Interior, we're responsible for about 20% of the land mass of the United States, managing that land and all the resources on it. Beyond that, we're also responsible for about 1.76 billion acres of the outer continental shelf. That's the submerged land that runs from the coastline approximately 200 miles off the coast, all around the United States and its protectorate. So there's significant resource that Interior is responsible for, not to mention all of the endangered species that we're responsible for by statute, and the hazards monitoring that we do, whether that's floods, hurricanes, tsunamis, volcanoes, earthquakes. We're talking about protection of human health and property. There's a tremendous responsibility on the shoulders of the Department of Interior and the 70,000 employees that represent that entity. It is our desire at Interior that our decisions and our management is based on the best available science. And in order to ensure that the best available science is informing that management and decision activity, we need to ensure that the science itself can be relied upon, be trusted. So that's where the integrity piece comes in. So why are we all talking about scientific integrity now? And you might wonder, well, are we talking about scientific integrity right now? If you missed it, there has been a lot of activity in the federal family, the agencies that are responsible for a variety of different things and report to the president. The presidential memorandum on integrity in March of 2009 basically said to all of the executive branch agencies, get yourself a policy, make sure that you protect the integrity of the work that you're relying on to make your decisions and to manage your resources. And then the Office of Science Policy, Science and Technology Policy under John Holdren released significant guidance to tell the agencies how to do that, how to actually put together their policy. So Department of Interior pounced on this with some zeal, partly because we had the U.S. Geological Survey scientific integrity policy already in place. And so we had something to start with. It was geared towards the science of GS, but it gave us a nugget that we could start work with. And so we had our first policy in January 2011, and we're working right now to get the final approval of our version 2, new and improved integrity policy, which should be out any moment now. So what is scientific integrity? Here are some words on a slide, which I'll let you read, but the next slide I think is much more useful because, I don't know, maybe most of you are, like me, a graphical learner. Words on a slide just confuse me unless I can sit down with a pen and actually dissect that paragraph into its bits and pieces. So let's actually talk about what is integrity from the point of view of a graphic and maybe something that will resonate with each of you who work in either an agency or a university or even a professional society. It shouldn't make any difference. You can replace credibility and reputation of your name here on this slide, and I think it will be relevant to all of you. So integrity, I'm claiming, is absolutely essential for the credibility of your agency, bureau, organization, university, whatever it may be. And the credibility of that entity is really based on the credibility and the reputation of the individuals that make up that organization. Well, that's pretty rational. Well, where do we actually get all of that? Where do we get the credibility and reputation of individual scientists? This is because we adhere to professional codes of conduct, we avoid conflicts of interest, and we behave ethically under all circumstances. Oops, there we go. We're also willing to consider new data, new analyses, don't get stuck in a rut. We participate in peer review to help monitor the quality of the work in our discipline, and we publish in reputable outlets so other people can assess our work. It requires that we have a deep understanding of our subject matter and that we stay current with our disciplines and that we adhere to the scientific methods in the process of carrying out science. So here's where integrity comes in. You have integrity when all of these building blocks are solid and uncompromised. When any of these building blocks are cracked or weathered or worn, you may be putting the reputation of your individuals, your bureau, your agency, your university in jeopardy. So integrity is maintaining this entire unit so that your reputation and credibility is intact. So the goal of our policy when we set forth to create this for Interior was to create a culture of integrity where it would be expected, it would be monitored, and it would be self-regulated. We know that all decisions are going to be informed by science, and we need that scholarship to be respected as credible. We want our work to be done with integrity and excellence. We want people to take pride in that. And we want our stakeholders and external agents that rely on our work to know that they can count on it. So the culture of integrity being the goal should have these conclusions follow from that. One key to our policy is that it applies to everyone, all 70,000 employees of a Department of Interior, whether they're political appointees or career employees, as well as contractors, cooperators, partners, permittees, lessees, grantees, and volunteers, anytime they touch science in any way. If you're a contracting officer and you're working on a science contract, the integrity policy applies to you. If you're a field hand that's been hired as an intern for the summer, the policy applies to you, as it does to the political appointees who run the organization. So that was a key, because everybody has to understand that they are all part of the solution of maintaining integrity. And anyone can be part of the problem of undermining the integrity. So some of the fundamental principles that guided our development of the policy were pretty straightforward. These are pretty rational. You want to define the expectations and the behavior expectations for everyone. Encourage free flow of information, transparency expectations. We want to make sure that scientific credentials are actually part of the hiring process, which they are not always explicitly so. Encourage open communication, reinforce principles of whistleblower protection, which is key. Ensure training makes the expectations clear to all, that is, training on the policy and what the expectations are of the employees with regard to integrity. We want to examine issues and take corrective action on problems that arise. And a key there is we want the scientists to examine the issues, not the political leadership, not the attorneys, not the contracting officers, but the scientists who actually understand the scientific process and the scientific products ought to be the ones doing the assessment. Now, obviously, they can't be in a situation of conflict of interest, so there has to be a way to reach out, grab a scientist that is outside of a particular potential problem, and have them do the assessment. And we've created that process. And of course, we want to implement best practices across the entire department with the ultimate objective of detecting and taking early corrective action. The train coming off the rails and dealing with the aftermath is way too late to have taken intervention action. There are signs when a train is about to go off the rails, and if you're paying attention to it, and if you have a system in place to actually monitor those people who are responsible for that train and the rails and everything that goes with it, that's science, then you can detect and take corrective action, keep the train on the rails, deal with the problem when it's small, and when a corrective action can actually be effective. So, one of the other keys of this is, though we just didn't write a policy on a piece of paper and stick it in the department manual, we put actual flesh and bone on this policy. We gave responsibility to an individual within each and every bureau of the agency, and one for the agency overall, of the scientific integrity officers. These are people with experience in science that understand the importance of protecting the process of science, and we gave them responsibilities for monitoring and putting life into this policy. One of the roles they play, importantly, is this ombudsman, where a person, when they feel the hair on the back of their neck stand up because somebody asked them to do something that they feel is not exactly kosher with regard to science, and they don't know quite who to turn to, maybe their colleagues are involved and they can't turn to their lab mates, they can call the scientific integrity officer at their bureau and have a conversation about it, a confidential conversation that helps them to sort out Are they hearing something that is violating the integrity of the situation, or are they potentially misunderstanding the situation and maybe need to go have a hard conversation with their supervisor? The integrity officers are trained and set up to help these people through these problems so that they can successfully navigate those potential loss of integrity issues nice and early to take easy corrective action before that train comes off the rails. We have a council of integrity officers. This is the peer group that helps each other out. And sometimes we need a subject matter expert group to sit down and sort through a problem. And the integrity officers have the authority to pull those together when necessary. Version 2, which basically gives us 2 years of lessons learned and best practices that we could fold into the next version, we decided that we needed a handbook to basically detail out some of the processes very clearly for both the integrity officers and for employees so that they could follow along. The ombudsman role has been actually codified into the policy, so it's not just understood. We have the Integrity Council, I mentioned that. We updated to keep step with the Whistleblower Enhancement Protection Act. We've added an appeals process. Everyone needs to understand that they have an option if they feel like they've been unfairly judged in the situation. So this is where we've made that clear. And of course, the intent we made clear on all the places where we were absolutely crystal clear about what we meant, but when other people read it, we couldn't understand how they could possibly get that out of what we wrote, but we're going to correct it anyway and make it work better. The other key to this is we didn't stop with the scientific integrity policy. That's not the only place that science can be mucked about with. It can be mucked about with in communications, in procurement, in all sorts of other places. So we worked with other offices that were in charge of other policies within the department to ensure that integrity elements and that the integrity policy was explicitly referenced in their policies, and that the expectations for good behavior on the integrity front were part and parcel with their policies as well. So we've worked our way through a couple of different policies, and we have a few more ahead of us. But it is a process, and we learn every day from the cases that we work with, either informal or formal cases. What I failed to do was give you a URL where you could learn more about this. It's real simple. doi.gov/scientific integrity, all one word. doi.gov/scientific integrity. You'll find our policy. You'll find cases that have been closed, those with and without merit that we've discovered, and a whole lot of other resources if you're interested in seeing how do you actually pull this off with 70,000 people and a whole variety of different job descriptions out there. And I'd be happy to discuss the implementation with you at your convenience as well. Thank you.